everyone. So glad to see you, everyone here. Thomas, I think we can start.
Okay, welcome. This is a workshop before the Jay on the Beach conference and hackathon that InterSystems is sponsoring. And so I'd like to introduce Dean Andrews, who's the head of developer relations, and he's going to walk through a little bit, give you some context about who InterSystems is and how we're working with the developer communities. And then I will show you a little bit about the hackathon challenge, some of the technology that we're going to provide, make available to you to use as part of the hackathon, and we'll be I'll walk you through a little bit of a demo of how you might use it in your project. So without further ado, here's Dean Andrews, head of developer relations.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining. Thank you for registering for our hackathon. We are very excited to see you in person on May 10th. As Tom said, I'll just give you a brief overview of InterSystems, a little about our technology and our developer resources. As you can see here, if you only remember one thing today, remember that InterSystems can help power your innovation. Next slide, Tom. And we do that through our technology, which you'll hear some about today, our expertise, and also our marketing and other resources. Next slide. We have forged an innovation pathway over the last year that really helps people take ideas from hackathons just like Jay on the Beach. And then if they're motivated and interested, we have actually set up a pathway such that you could take an idea created in a hackathon like Jay on the Beach, then incubate it as a startup in our startup incubator and acceleration program, and then even go to market, because we have set up this pathway such that we can help startups go along this journey. And you hear a little more about that as we go. Next slide, please. A little about InterSystems. Now I'm going to talk a little about from the view of the healthcare industry, but just know InterSystems works across many industries, including healthcare, financial services, supply chain, and many others. And you can apply our technology to really any industry. In healthcare, we have customers in over 100 countries. Over 1 billion patient records around the world are managed on InterSystems technology, about 2/3 of the patient records in the United States. Our technology is all focused on data. It's on data management, data integration and operability, and data analytics, which is the focus of the technology we're presenting in the hackathon today. We're considered a world leader in this data management, data interoperability, and data analytics. Next slide, Tom. We work with customers and partners across the industries, again, in healthcare and financial services and supply chain. Here, just focusing on healthcare, we work with really all of the stakeholders, from healthcare providers, insurance companies, life sciences and medical device companies, regional entities like health information exchanges, and even government programs like the National Health Service in the UK. And again, the same is true in financial services and supply chain and other industries. We really work across the spectrum. Next slide. A little about our technology. Next slide after this. As I mentioned, our technology is all focused on data. The thing about data in really any industry is that there is a massive amount of it. They're coming from new sources, and new sources of data are generated all the time in new solutions. They're often in different formats. And so our technology is all about pulling data from different sources, making it interoperable so that they can communicate from one format to another, and then analyzing that data with tools like what Tom will be talking about, our integrated machine learning such that you can make sense of the data, you can quickly draw insights and actions from that data. It's focused on these three core pillars: that data management that I mentioned, data interoperability, and analytics. And the integrated machine learning comes under this analytics pillar that I've mentioned. Next slide. We have a startup program, as I mentioned, part of that innovation pathway to take ideas from just concept all the way through to market. Our startup program itself has three pillars. We've asked a bunch of startups what would be helpful, and we built a program around that. So it includes that startup incubation acceleration. We have growth toolkits to help startups build an audience. And then we even have a corporate venture fund where we fund some startups and help them get to market. Next slide. This is a little about our startup incubator. This is our second year. It's running in Prague in the Czech Republic. It just kicked off in March. We have 22 teams. We have partnerships with, this one is healthcare focused, but there are hospital partners, there's angel investors, and even other industry partners like Novartis. And we really have, in this incubator, we have startups from all over the world are participating. It's a virtual incubator, so you can participate from anywhere. And we're also partnered with several accelerators this year as well: Amazon AWS Accelerator, MedTech Innovator, and others as well. Next slide. We have a great developer community at InterSystems. We have now over 13,000 developers all over the world. You can reach this portal through developer.intersystems.com. It's got an incredible forum of question and answers and information. It's got code samples and sandboxes and many other things to help you get started with our technology. Next slide. And we even have an open source app gallery. It's called Open Exchange. You can really use these applications because you can access all of the source code and see how people are innovating on InterSystems technology. And it's all available to you through our developer community. There's now over 700 applications in our Open Exchange app gallery. Next slide. And now I am going to pass it over to Tom to talk to you about our challenge and our technology for this hackathon. Thank you so much again for joining and registering.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Dean. So what I'm going to talk about is kind of a technology that's embedded within our data platform, our IRIS data platform, which is not only a database, but also has functionality for interoperability. We have a healthcare variant of it that includes all the healthcare messaging formats and a lot of helpful tools to manage healthcare data. But IntegratedML itself is really just based on SQL. It's all SQL. And really, we want to bring kind of the machine learning capabilities right to kind of the data engineer, the analyst, the developer that has some concept of the data, but may not want to set up a whole separate environment, separate language, Python, go through a lot of data copying and translating between environments. That introduces a lot of friction, potential for mistakes, and just little things like data types often don't translate well between different environments. So this integrates it. When you get the IRIS data platform with IntegratedML, you just get extra SQL that allows you to create a model, very simple SQL, it's elegant. Like create a model that takes as input a table. So then in a database, if you have a table of data, the database knows what all the columns are. So we can leverage all of that information and make the syntax very simple. So you just create a model that really doesn't do any work, but when you actually train the model, you can give it, it's really going to take that same data that you said when you created it, it's going to train a model underneath using one of these three engines that we have that you can set up differently depending on your needs. And once the model is created, you're able to just use this predict function in a select clause so that when you get data or get new data, you can invoke the model. So what I just did with this syntax is completely train and deploy a model right next to the data. And you're able to use that in any application. You could also see that you could iterate this and make a lot of different models from any amount of data. Just get all of your data in here and you'll be able to develop models and then use them. So really, it's kind of the benefits, you're building, you're deploying, you're managing your models right at where your data is and wherever you can use SQL. So you can use this from like dbeaver or some other client or your other tools that talk to InterSystems database through SQL. And so then your machine learning and your predictions are right where the data lives, and you just reduce all that friction I mentioned before, having separate environments. And since we have different pluggable backends, you still get the best of breed. AutoML and machine learning in general, of course, is moving very quickly. So you're not tied exactly to what's necessarily in the database that or the packages that we choose. You'll be able to, you kind of pick and choose how you want to do your machine learning. And then as part of the SQL engine, you're getting auditing, you're getting security and permissions from a very mature database system. And your training activity, your validation activity is all logged. So you can, it's really good to build applications on that are pretty serious applications. Okay, so let me just show some basic syntax and kind of walk through exactly how you use it. So you can imagine this problem where you have a table of data, this table or a view, which can connect data from multiple tables. And it's a typical SQL kind of thing, if you're not familiar with SQL. And say you have orders and they come in at different times, they get shipped, and you can calculate at some point a delay of like how much time it took to ship and fulfill this order. And you'd like to kind of understand that. You might want to develop a machine learning model that would tell you that when someone's making the order so that you could have something pop up to them saying this might get delayed based on current conditions, yada, yada, just something for an application. So the idea would be that you get a new order in and you'd be able to run this machine learning model to predict a probability or a likelihood or how long it's going to take or how big the delay is going to be so that you can then act on that. You're already collecting all your data in this database. It'd be good to just run a machine learning model right there. So this is the syntax you would use anywhere you can use SQL, as I mentioned. You create a model, you're going to call it something. It's like creating another table, but you're creating this model within the database that you're going to then use. And you say predicting, and you put in that parentheses which column you want the machine learning model to learn about based on all the other columns. So it's going to use the dates, it's going to use the widget ID, and any other data that you have. You might join up some weather data to this view so that weather might be a big predictor, and your machine learning model might figure that out in certain instances. So that's what that model is going to do. It's just going to try to predict delay whenever it gets trained. So now you can train your model. And here's where the power of SQL comes in, where you've got machine learning and SQL together, and it's just beautiful. Okay, so now you're training a model, and you can use this where clause. So this is some SQL that limits the data that goes into whatever you're doing on the left-hand side. So we're going to train it on earlier data from before 2019, and we only want to use it for rows that had an actual delay amount filled in. Your data might be dirty, so this is the kind of thing that you can use to, kind of get the right training set for your model. So you do that, and it's going to train. If you have a lot of data, like hundreds of thousands or millions of rows, it's going to take, a long time, maybe an hour, maybe longer to train this model. But typically, if you have a few thousand rows, it's just going to be a few minutes. So that's the usual thing for a hackathon and should work for this. All right, so then after it's done training, you kind of want to see how it did, and you want to see if it performed well. So we have like a separate and other very flexible command called validate model. And you're going to pass the name of your model, we call it delay model. And we're going to then choose different data. We're going to now validate it on data that's after 2019. So this is data that it hasn't seen before. But we're not going to validate it on everything. We're just going to limit it also to less than 2020. So like a year's worth of data, get an idea of how the model does on data it's never seen before at all. And then it puts the metrics in the database so you can get those out from this information schema table. So then you select and you get all your validation metrics from inside the database. So every time you do a validation run, every day of training, it's all recorded within this information schema table. And so then that brings up the actual results, and you can look at the metrics. They have different measures that you can decide whether or not this is a good model. Maybe you want to go back and add more data or change the way you're doing things. You do this all through SQL and just get a clear idea of how your model is performing. So then once you're happy with the model, you can then use it. So anywhere you're like managing your data, you're selecting data out of the database to put into your UX or whatever it is in your application that you want to do, you can use this new SQL function called predict, and it takes one or more arguments. There are more complicated ways to call it than this, but this is the very simple way of just giving it the name of the model. And then you're naming the output column delay prediction, and we're also giving it just all of the data after 2020. So now you're giving and predicting on data that's much newer than what it was trained on. It's probably not going to do as well, but anyways, this is how things work in machine learning. You often have to predict on things that you just don't know about. So when that happens, it makes a new column, right? So we get that same data back. You have the delay, and then you get some prediction. And you can see that, there's some differences between the prediction and the actual delay that you know about. And you can get some confidence whether it's in the range or whatever of what you expect for your users. It depends on your application whether this is useful. So that's just kind of basic. I even put in this last example. This is another way to call predict. As I mentioned, there's more complicated ways. If you don't even want to select out of your table, say you're just trying to use this model to predict some data that you're getting from some other sources, you can just pass in data in a list here that just invokes the model. So then you're pretty much just using the IRIS database as kind of a model server that works through SQL. And that's pretty handy to have. So it's very flexible. This should give you an idea of kind of how we've built a very flexible little tool within a database on top of a very high performance SQL engine. And our data platform has a whole bunch of other features that make it useful. And so when you mix all of those features together with some very intuitive machine learning, it should be fun to build applications with. So that's how we also want to make sure you can connect to other kind of open source projects and use those with InterSystems IRIS. So we have a DB API driver. We have these projects that are supported within our community that provide object relational mapping. There's a lot of things you can do with SQL Alchemy. And also DBT. Well, so DBT is an open source project that also has a company behind it that does analytics kind of transformations within your database. So you build pipelines that use SQL, And those pipelines can do any number of kind of transformations using SQL, but then also add templating and add variables. You can have loops in your SQL and then manage those as code. So it's a very code-centric analytics tool, and we have some kind of experimental / community support for that tool, and could be useful in your projects. So now to the challenge and the hackathon. Now it's a short hackathon. We have these QR codes, and I'm going to flip over to my screen, my web browser, and show you what you see on those. We also have a Discord channel, so that will be handy to share links and just talk with people before and maybe even after the hackathon. Also want to mention that someone in the team needs to have a GitHub account so that you can kind of actually submit your project at the end of the day using a GitHub repo, and that's the method the judges are going to look through the repo as well as listen to your presentation to judge. All right, so let me just go over to my web browser, and I got to get some stuff out of my way here because I can't see what's going on. Hold on. Okay, so when you click on that QR code that's at the top left, this is essentially our challenge. Okay, now first off, what's really important is what's on the right-hand side, which are the prizes. Okay, we have some excellent prizes. 350 euro Amazon gift cards for each member of the winning team, as well some tickets for the actual conference. And you get 4 personal subscriptions to the JetBrains IDE of choice. And JetBrains has a lot of great products, so that's awesome. Second place is JBL Pulse 4 light show speakers for each team member. Actually, this has got a little bit large, so then it spilled over. Oh, well, I guess that's a bit, sorry. For each team member, very nice speaker. And then for third place, we have these Swiss Peak backpacks and earbuds for each team member. So really nice prizes. And so in order to get those, you're going to use IntegratedML that I just kind of showed you a little bit. And you're going to have cloud accounts in our IntegratedML cloud environment, our cloud service, that really makes it easy. And I'm going to actually walk you through that and show you how to use it. But really, it's a fully managed database service, provides connectivity. You can get to it through that DB API connector, the driver that I mentioned, JDBC. Use it with whatever SQL editor you want. I love dbeaver. And then you can connect, of course, using DB API to all of your whatever other aspects of your application you want to use. If you want to develop something in a front-end kind of framework or front-end, back-end, middleware framework like Flask or Flutter, you can do that. And that can make a really engaging kind of application. So anyways, so what is it that you're going to do? So we only have a short amount of time. It's an 8-hour hackathon. And so really expectations should be, tempered. They should be reasonable. However, we put some ideas for the types of applications and what you can do with machine learning, in particular, kind of using integrated ML within them. We have like 4 different kind of ideas. Of course, you can do whatever you want, but these are, somewhat tractable kind of applications in like emergency management or logistics for a product demand forecast. I have some people may be interested in healthcare and have healthcare data, so a no-show predictor could be very valuable. And then within finance, just doing like expense categorization. And we have some links to some European open data sources. Of course, there's other data that you could get. You can even make up data. Of course, it's easy to do that with ChatGPT and things like that. So it's really not so much about well, it can be, really using real data for really hard problems. That's always very special. But just kind of getting the concept of what you want your app to be, and then filling in, making enough data or getting enough data to just show the concept. That's really great for a hackathon as well. It's really just kind of getting together, learning about things, maybe trying to build up something around an idea, and just having a lot of fun. Okay, so that will be the challenge that you can start thinking about. Of course, you have the QR code. You can go look at these in more detail and just get some ideas. Okay, so now that you're motivated, getting some ideas about what you might do, and the prizes that you might get your hands on, I'm going to show you a little bit about how our cloud services portal works. So we have a this is after you log in. Of course, once we get to the hackathon, you can email me. Actually, email me at any point, really, if you want an account here, and then I will send you the credentials, and then you will be able to log right into here, and you'll be able to set up deployments. And deployments are kind of instances of Iris. Okay, so I've already got a couple running here, and I can show you what you do with them. But really, once you get here, and even if you don't have any deployments, one thing to look at is up in the upper right, there is this open integrated ML orientation. This slides out. I think I have my screen set a little too big. Okay, hold on. There we go. So there you can see it. And really, this walks through. Have a very nice interface that walks through all of those steps that I did with SQL in that example of creating your model, training your model, validating your model. But before that, you're going to have to get your data into the database, and we have some really good support and some instructions on just setting up the deployment in the first place, and then creating tables and loading them. So once you create a deployment, you get this way to click into it, and you're opened into it, and you can see on the left you've got a lot of different things you can do. First off, for the deployment, as you can see here, all the information about the server that's running underneath, the credentials. You have a way to copy and paste this the username, and of course you set up the password when you set up the deployment at the beginning of it, and that's really straightforward. And then you can go and click here, and you can get links to all the drivers to connect to this machine. And this just gives you a really good overview. Hello?
Sorry for interrupt. There is a comment here from Andy that I can only see the slide. Is there anyone who also? Just I can see perfectly well of the screen.
Oh, really? Okay.
I can see the screen. I can see the screen as
yes.
well.
Everyone, can you please just confirm quickly that you can see the demo? You can just yeah, nice.
Okay.
Just plus or something.
Oh my gosh,
we'll
gave me a little heart attack.
That's okay. People see the demo. Nice. Thanks.
We have time, but yeah. So maybe restart your Zoom.
Okay. Nice. Let's continue.
Okay, onward. All right. So this just gives you some information. Of course, you're going to need all that to connect to your instance. And of course, I mentioned you get to add and manage files. So this has already been done here, where I've actually loaded up a bunch of these files. But the way that I got them, you can either upload files from your laptop or whatever, or you can transfer them externally. Now, there's a limit to what you can upload. I do believe it's like a 4 megabyte per file limit for uploading. But it is unlimited pretty much from external storage. So you can link to an Amazon S3 bucket, and we have one that has our samples. And once you connect to that bucket, you can then list the files that are in that bucket like these, and select some to actually transfer from Amazon S3 into your cloud deployment. And so if you want to add your own, you just have to have the ARN of the S3 bucket and the region, and then we help you get connected to that. So that's how you get data in, but then, or data into the deployment, those are just raw files, but then you need to import them into tables, and we have a nice UI. And of course, on the right, there's some instructions on how to do this. And we actually have like these sample files, and really makes a sample that you can train a model and then actually use that model and play around with it. So there's two types of files. You can put in DDL files, which create the structure of your tables and your database kind of objects. And then you have to then fill those. So this is kind of a two-step process, and you fill those tables with CSV data. And so it's just a really nice UI that walks you through it. There you get a list of all those files that you transferred into your deployment, and you can just choose those and then choose which table you want to import into. So I think in this case, we have this star classification problem in a data set. And so I'm going to choose that, and then I choose which table it goes into, and I have that ready to go. Oops, it was actually this one. And that CSV file, of course, has a header row, and then you have some other options, and then you can import. So that happens really quickly. Then once your data is like imported, you can, oh, actually, there was a problem. Interesting. Maybe I already did this. So if you do it twice, you might have an issue. So we'll move on. There's definitely a lot of resources there to help you get through that, and we'll be around to help. So then we have a nice little SQL editor. You can see here, as I mentioned before, when you're doing the integrated ML training, in information schema, you have these different tables that you can then query and look at with the validation metrics, the models, and it's easy to kind of browse through what's in your database. In this case, I really have these yellow trip data, which is from a yellow taxi data set from New York City. It's a bunch of data about taxi trips, how much they cost, where they went from and to, and how much the tip was. And so that's kind of the example that we walk through on the right here. And so the process is so you can kind of do some things like, okay, select star from yellow trip data. You can just execute that. That just shows you all the data that's in your this yellow trip data train. Come on, you can do it. This is being a little slow. Okay, so anyways, here you go. You can just kind of page through and just see all of this data. As I mentioned, it's like the pickup time, when the trip was, how many passengers, all these types of things. And the idea of the exercise is to try to predict how much the tip was going to be. You can imagine maybe some application that a taxi driver would want to do when they pick someone up, or they're going to pick someone up. They'd like to know how much they're going to get tipped. Now, maybe this is not going to make so much sense to a European audience. In the US, we tip everybody for food and for driving us around, pretty much anything. And it becomes a very large part of people's income. So anyways, that's the example that we have. And so what you can do to go through this exercise is now you click on this integrated ML tools thing on the left-hand side, and you have all of these stages laid out again: create, train, validate, predict. And we just walk you through it. You put in the name of the model, and then create it. I'll just say 1 because I've already made regular trip model. And then you can kind of show the created models. It doesn't take any time, as I mentioned. So we just have a really nice little kind kind of facility to do this, and you can override it if you want to put in some other options. And then when you train, well, let's see, I'm gonna train trip model 1 now, and if I do that, it's going to take a while. However, I'm gonna skip right forward in the baking show, and we can actually see the trained models that we've already done. And you can see that we have this tip model that I've already trained in the trained models. And we can show the training runs, which is quite nice. You can look and see all the things that I've done. I had a couple that failed. I actually had not put the data into the table. And so when I actually tried to train it, it failed. And you get some log about what happened in your training run. You just click on that little icon and oops, pops it up. Sorry, this kind of run a little bit slow. Just showed failed to import data. That gave me an idea. Oh, I must not have done that right. Now here, this top one we actually ran. It ran for 239 seconds. I think we should probably change that to minutes and seconds. So that's just a few minutes. And you get the log output. So this is the AutoML that's happening underneath. In the case of the cloud service, we have one of those integrated ML engines underneath. It's just the H2O3. We're using the open source H2O AutoML engine, which is really nice. It does a lot of stuff for you. So it just takes that kind of raw SQL table. It normalizes the data, meaning puts it in all in the right ranges. Kind of does some encoding, so it makes the data easier to read by the machine learning models, and then actually does the training. So there's a lot of stuff that just gets automated for you. That's what they call it, AutoML. And then once it has that data kind of pre-processed, it goes through a bunch of different models and tests different models. And you can see these kinds of things running underneath, and just goes and tests a bunch. And at the end, gets to a table, a leaderboard of a bunch of different models. It ensembles them, sophisticated way of training multiple models and then combining their output to get a better output than either one alone. And so you can get an idea of kind of the metrics and the output just by looking at this log file. So a lot of cool stuff to look at for a machine learning kind of person. And then, of course, it walks you through this validation step and just validate it on whatever data you want. And you can kind of get in here and edit the SQL, kind of like I showed in that example where you add some where clauses. You can do all that from dbeaver or wherever you edit your SQL or a Jupyter notebook. It's all SQL, so it doesn't matter where you do it, but here you have a nice little place to do that. And then after you're done, you can see these validation metrics. And so we have two types of models that you can build, and it depends on that output type of the column that you're trying to learn on. And the example that I did was a tip amount. And so when you're predicting a tip amount, that's a numeric value, and it's going to make a regression model where the model is just trying to predict the exact amount. And so there's certain metrics that are useful for those. I have those here. And we draw a little chart that gives you kind of an idea of the predicted versus the actual, and see how noisy your data is, and just get an idea of how well your model does. In addition to these metrics that are just standard metrics. So anyways, that's that. Once you have that model there, as I mentioned, you can do predict. And so within this UI, you can choose which model. You can say, I want to make a prediction on the validate and how many rows, and we just write that SQL for you. So this gives you a really quick way to kind of debug what you're doing, generate SQL to change things around, see how it goes. And then when you want to execute it, you can just go right over here. I thought it would fill it in. Hold on, let me just do that. Let me go back to there. Okay. Can I just do that? Hold on. Okay. The demo gods have failed me. So I have to put it in. but you can just easily. Tip model from yellow, what is it? Yellow trip data validate. And you'll just see if there's not an error in my SQL, that it's going back and running this model on every one of those rows, which does slow down your SQL a little bit. But here you get all of those columns that you had before, and you get this extra column that's the prediction of the tip amount. And you can see that it's a numeric value. And it ran the model then on all of these rows, 15,637 rows in that amount of time. So that's pretty slick, actually. So we've done a lot of work to make these models easy to use on the performance optimizations on the SQL. You can actually put that predict function inside the where clause, so you can kind of analyze how your model does on different. You can look at where your model was predicting badly. So it's a really nice tool to kind of dig in and see how your model does. So I hope you got a little idea of how you might use our portal, at least, to speed up your project and get to those results and get to a working model on the data that you want. We're going to be at the hackathon, really kind of working with you. We've got great community members coming in, InterSystems employees, associates, myself, to help you with anything, and we're just going to have a great time. So thank you very, very much. Just to kind of open it up for questions. We have quite a bit of time, actually, for questions. So were there any in the chat, Olga? Didn't see any.
Not yet. I just put the command that, guys, you feel free to unmute and ask questions if you have.
So yeah, I don't know. I could put a little poll, just kind of a poll of how many people here have used integrated ML or used in machine learning at all, either in a project at school. Be nice to know what kind of an audience we have here. Sure, if there's a way to just raise your hand or do that kind of a thing. And also get an idea of if anybody's used SQL for things, in detail. A lot of times I've been at hackathons and we have quite a few kind of students, maybe a freshman in college or whatnot, and they haven't necessarily used SQL or gotten into databases. But I think at Jay on the Beach, we're going to have some experienced developers, some professional developers that are going to be pretty familiar with the content I just showed. So I'm looking forward.
There is a question here. Andrea. Yeah,
yes.
Andrea,
so it is not open source. Okay. We have a lot of open source kind of projects and examples. Like Dean had mentioned on Open Exchange, there's a lot of those things are open source things, as well as the community connectors. But integrated ML is provided in our community edition, which is a free, kind of smaller licensed version of InterSystems Iris that has quite a bit of the functionality, including integrated ML. So you can run that in a Docker container. You can install that locally on your machine if you'd like, and use integrated ML. And that's yeah. Great. I'm glad you think so, Andreas. Yes, I'm happy to speak with anybody offline. I'll be available on the Discord channel. You can email me as per the resources, that is how the first step to getting a deployment. And anybody that's on this call, whether you're going to be actually at the hackathon or not, please, you can send email to me. And then I will send you credentials. You'll enter them here at this cloud portal, which I'm already logged in. But if I log out, you'll see what you'll see. And
Tom,
yes.
may I ask a question? So the question is, when we run a train model versus our model in IntegratedML, what machine learning libs are being used?
What machine learning what?
Libraries, what libs?
Yeah, so in the cloud portal, we're using the H203 AutoML package. And that's open source, and you can actually see exactly what it's doing. It tries a bunch of different models. It'll try a neural network model. It'll try XGBoost, gradient boosted machines. They have their implementations of a lot of different types of models that they try out underneath. That's kind of the point of AutoML. But the H203 AutoML engine kind of tries to balance things. It also provides some ways to limit the amount of time. There's actually SQL that we can add to where you tell H2O only train for like 10 minutes or 5 minutes. So it will do its best, the best that it can within the amount of time that you give it. And there's some other options that we provide access for through the SQL. So it's really simple just to add that as part of your SQL command.
Oh, nice. So using SQL command, which can just limit the time of model build training, right?
Yes, yeah, it's a very useful option there, especially in a hackathon, and that makes it very usable for a lot of different things. Now, you know, when you give it very little time, it's going to come up with not a very optimized model, but that may be good enough for what you're trying to show in the demo. And always go back and do more work later to make everything better. Oh, thanks, David, for putting that link to the community Docker link. That's excellent. Yeah, we have a lot of documentation about integrated ML, like I mentioned. You know, we have the walkthrough and a lot of resources online. Well, I guess we can wrap it up if there's no more questions. Or if someone would like to see something else or any other discussion, happy to oblige.
Thank you, Thomas. Everyone, I put 2 links in the chat. First one is challenge resources page, which Thomas mentioned. And the second one is invitation link to our Discord channel. You will see there a dedicated hackathons channel on this server. And you will see there our mentors, and feel free to ask questions online if you have. We will also use this space in case you would love to share some online links during the hackathon, you know, some kind of place where you can easily, you know, share information online if needed. So please check that. And also please make sure you have a GitHub account. I'm pretty much sure you already have, but just I want to double check because we will use GitHub for your project submission process. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay in touch and see everyone pretty soon.
See you soon. I'm getting on a plane tonight, so I'll be in Malaga tomorrow.
This webinar will be the recording of this webinar will be also available at our resources page. So feel free to watch it again on demand. See you, everyone. Bye.